Well, it is election time here in British Columbia, and the same is also true for our neighbors to the south. You may have noticed that. And for you voters, this means a lot of information coming your way, pledges and promises, and of course, takedowns of opponents. Now, navigating all of this can be challenging, especially when politicians don't necessarily have to be truthful, whether they're on the campaign trail or in office. And so, what if there was a law that made lying illegal? Well, Welsh parliamentarian Adam Price brought forward exactly that legislation in July, and it'll be introduced before the next Welsh elections in 2 years' time. Now, Price was advised on the legislation by Barrister Sam Fowles, and Sam has been good enough to join us on the line now from London. Good morning to you, Sam.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for being with us. Tell us, first of all, how you became involved in this effort. How were you approached?
Well, yes, I suppose it all started with a case that I argued way back in 2019, where you may remember that then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who was then Boris Johnson. We've had a few different ones since then, but at the time it was Boris Johnson. Did something that what we call proroguing Parliament, and it basically means shutting down Parliament.
We do the
Now,
same.
Boris Johnson claimed that he was doing this just for purely administrative reasons, and it just so happened to coincide, though, with his Brexit negotiations, and Parliament didn't agree with him on the outcome of those negotiations. And I was part of the team that proved in court that the real reason that Johnson shut down Parliament was to prevent MPs from scrutinising him, basically. And that it led to there was headlines that saying Boris Johnson lied to the Queen and lied to the people. And that's, in my view, completely right. And ever since then, I've been very involved in efforts to try and clean up lying in politics. And this was I and a number of other people have been promoting ideas about a law which says not everyone, but politicians, so people that are asking you to trust them, people that are holding public office, people that are taking public money for that office, should be required to tell the truth. Now, I do just want to make clear, in the UK and I think in most legislatures, there's already rules that say politicians should tell the truth. So what we're actually doing here isn't creating a new duty. We're just trying to enforce the one that already exists and is completely ignored in most cases.
But in the case of Boris Johnson, how did you prove that the reason that he had prorogued Parliament, or the stated reason he had prorogued Parliament, was not the truth?
Well, in that case, we had two helpful things. One was the documents, and we had internal cabinet documents where they discussed proroguing Parliament to prevent MPs from scrutinising Johnson's Brexit negotiations. And also the court did what it will do in almost every situation where there's a dispute about the facts, which was to say, well, let's look at the context, let's look at all of the evidence, and let's decide what is the most likely explanation here. Is it really believable that Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament for a significantly longer period than it's usually prorogued, at the exact time that it would prevent MPs from voting down his Brexit deal, and he did it for some other reason? Is that believable? The court said it wasn't, and I think everyone sort of really understood that it wasn't.
We know that politicians often work in fiction and speculation, hyperbole, the stretching of the truth, liberal interpretations. How does this legislation actually work to determine when a politician is just outright lying, versus everything else politicians do that doesn't exactly line up with the truth?
Sure, and that's the sort of key to the whole enterprise, really. So, of course, you've got to recognise that politicians are going to make extraordinary statements, and they'll say, "Well, we're going to cure homelessness in 2 years," and then you get to 2 years later, and they haven't done anything of the sort. That's not a lie. That's an ambitious statement. That's an opinion. But when they say, and I'll give you a real life example, when they say, as our immigration minister did not too long ago on live television, the Refugee Convention requires immigrants to seek asylum in the first safe country. Well, that's a statement of fact, and that's a statement of fact that isn't true. you can tell that it's not true because you just go and look at what it says in the Refugee Convention. Another example is a politician in the UK recently made the claim, I've never met with the Russian ambassador, and there's photographs of him shaking hands with the Russian ambassador. So it's these statements that are very clearly statements of fact and meant to be digested as statements of fact, that are going to be caught by the law, and statements of opinion are not going to be caught. And that's it's not an alien thing to do. We do it in English and Canadian and American law all the time, because we have defamation laws. And if a court faced with a defamation hearing is required to ask itself, well, was this person expressing an opinion, which is something they're allowed to do, or were they stating a fact? And if that fact is wrong, well, then it's defamatory.
What sort of buy-in do you have from, well, first of all, people in government when it comes to this?
Well, I think certainly in the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd, as we call it, there's we've got quite significant buy-in. So this was first going to be voted on back in July, and there was a majority in the Senedd, and it was most importantly, it was a cross-party majority. You know, it included the Conservatives, it included some Labour members, Plaid Cymru, which is the party of Wales, and the Liberal Democrats. So you had a real cross-section. But perhaps most importantly, in a democracy, this is an idea that it's overwhelmingly popular with the British people, and not just the Welsh people, the British people as a whole. There's something like 2/3 support for this idea in polling. And, as a politician, I don't think politicians get many sort of clear wins with the electorate, but this is something that they can do and everyone will get on board with.
We had a politician here by the name of Kim Campbell who served for a very short time as a prime minister, an unelected prime minister, and lost an election, reducing her party from 156 members of parliament to just two. Her famous line is, an election campaign is no time to be talking about serious issues. Do you agree?
I mean, I really disagree. Another classic line. I was going to say from a less auspicious circumstance, possibly from a more auspicious source, from the West Wing, is everyone's stupid in an election year. No, everyone gets treated like they're stupid in an election year. And I think that's right. I think the voters deserve better. That an election time is the time to talk about serious issues, but also to take those issues seriously. And we have seen in the UK. And I think in states across the world, our political discourse become really degraded with these sort of, cheap shots that are cheap lies about various issues, which makes it impossible to debate the substance of the issue themselves. And when you've got one politician saying, well, I've got a unbeaten economic record and I've created growth for the past 4 years, when they transparently haven't, it means you never get to actually have a conversation about what is going to create economic growth in the country, because everyone gets too busy just trying to figure out, are the numbers going up or down?
Right. And of course, the politicians are famous for for cherry picking, for slicing the pie in the way that suits them and suits what they're trying to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got some really good organizations that in the UK, both the sort of official and unofficial organizations that push back against that. And so there was there's some examples in the UK election, and we had organisations like the Office for Budget Responsibility coming out and saying, no, I think the Conservative Party made various claims about the Labour Party's economic plans and how much they would cost. And you had civil servants and the Office for Budget Responsibility saying, look, we're not going to get involved in the election, but you can't say that we have said that. You can't attribute that to us because we haven't said it. You're cherry picking our figures.
Right.
And it was so important for that point to be made. And one of the things that this law is going to look at is not just a sort of straight lie, saying yellow is red, but is the statement taken as a whole a misleading statement?
Right.
And again, that's something we do in court all the time.
Sam, so good to hear you this morning. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it. And we very much look forward to seeing how this all works out.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
And Sam Fowles, a barrister, author, and a broadcaster.